Osiris.
We're mass communicating. We're mass communicating. Mass communicating.
Welcome back to Touchdowns All Day. I'm your host, Max Dawson, and I am joined today by John Barber.
Hey guys, what's up?
John, congratulations!
Papasan.
Thank you. Thank you.
The other voice you're hearing is a very good friend of ours, friend of the pod, friend of Barber's, friend of the Disco Biscuits community, friend of the world, Kevin Abrams.
What up, world? What up, Disco Biscuits community? What up, Papasan?
What's up?
We have not spoken since you became girl dad.
Girl dad, baby, that's me.
Everyone is doing well. Mother and baby are good. Big brother is good. You look like you got beat up.
I'm being told that I need to make a post about it, so my bad for not making a post yet.
Making a post for getting beat up or a post for having the child?
We need to publicly announce that I had a baby girl last week. I thought everybody knew, but I think I need to make a post, and everybody will be happy when there's a picture of the fam and my new little daughter. Her name is Stevie Lynn Josephine Gutwillig, and she is newborn status, which is just like, it's so weird. Newborns are so weird. And we just hang out, feed her milk, and chill. And, of course, I have a son who's 5, so we do a lot of "you're still important" damage control with my 5-year-old. And so it's a lot of balancing between the two of, like, letting River get away with murder.
So just out of curiosity, when you named her, did you think about her eventual burden of having to fill out applications with that full name?
Yeah, like we didn't know what to name her. We were at my sister's house, and with all of her kids, she's got 3 kids, so my nieces and nephews, and we were all just sitting around, and my sister was thumbing through the book of girl names, and Lisa was like kind of in with it, and I was just kind of chatting with my mom, who's like 80, in the corner, and we weren't really paying attention. And everybody erupted like, yay, yay. And it was like, they'd been going through names for an hour and a half. They were literally turning down names. And it's funny because my mom doesn't like any name at all. It doesn't matter what you name. Maybe she doesn't like that name. And I like any name. I'm fine with anything. And so every name they come up with, it would be like Gretchen. I'd be like, that's not bad. And my mom would be like, terrible, don't do it. So that was going on for like an hour and a half. And then finally, me and my mom were talking about just like, her life or something. And everybody erupts in happiness at the same time. And it was when my sister threw out the name Stevie. So there you go. I mean, we got...
And then what, the other names are like misdirects for your mom, so she can't really decide which name she doesn't like?
Well, yeah, it's kind of to give it a little bit of a flow. I think it gives it it gives it a little flow, from my opinion, like a vocal flow. Lynn is is Lisa's mom's name. This is her 4th grandchild, the only girl grandchild. So we're like, yeah, she's also an incredible grandmother. She's just like next level incredible. She's like an event promoter and a grandmother and a caretaker all in one. It's pretty wild to watch. She's got like agendas for these kids. They go away and camp with her.
There's themes, cowboy camp. I saw River running around the other day in a Zelda outfit, a Link, dressed as Link.
Yeah, she does all that stuff. But when so she's a big part of raising these kids. And so we gave her we love you, thank you type of shout out in the name. And then it ends up Stevie Lynn is also Stevie Lynn from Fleetwood Mac, ironically.
Oh, really? That's her middle name too?
And so we didn't even mean that to happen, but the music gods made it happen. So we went with that. And Josephine was the original name of her. And Josephine was just a name that Lisa's dad's middle name is Joseph, so we were going to do something like that. So it's just that simple. You take the grandparents, you screw with the names a little bit, you add some rhyme, you rap it a few times, and you get out of there.
No, I like the name Stu. I feel like that, like you mix it up like that, you're bound to land on something.
Yeah, everybody's got to like the first name, and nobody likes the last name. So it's just like, and then in the middle, you just kind of meander. And I just think that names, like my name, John Gutwillig, like I just don't like the little name and the last name. I like to have some journeys on the way there.
Wait, is your birth name John or Jonathan?
John, Jon.
Is that like a news breaking piece of information that he's just John?
I never knew.
I mean, the guys. Let's light up the boards with that one. He's just John.
I was at a party in Sri Lanka and I talked to the Swedish girls that were there. And I was like, oh, my name's John, Swedish John. And they were like, why is your name Swedish John? And I go, because Jon, but it's not Jonathan. And they were like, that's not Swedish John. And I was
that's
like,
Norwegian John. Norwegian John.
Not. Yeah. No, it's a different kind of John than that. But yeah, I don't know, whatever names, what's in a name? You know what I mean? What do you do?
I think that you've heard Kevin speaking for a while, but we should probably tell you who Kevin is. John,
that's right.
Who is Kevin? Who is this guy? Why is he in my house?
Kevin is the co-writer of Bassist for a Day. For this audience, I think that's the single most important thing. Kevin and I have been best buds forever. And still to this day, like each other in a way that I would consider friendly. We get along. I gave a speech at his wedding that was pure fire. And I think there's no other way to say I love you than give somebody a pure fire wedding speech.
He turned around and repaid the favor.
Yes, he did. He had props
mine was
in
more.
mind.
Mine was more of a miniseries, though.
I was just rewatching Kevin's speech in preparation for today to see if there was anything in there, and I don't think there was a single. I think he said, "Hi, I'm Kevin," and I think at that point everything went into pure fiction.
It was pure fiction. It was
no,
great.
we talked about the actual. I was there for the naming of this band. And the actual moment that occurred. So that was the truth.
Right. And people still ask me that fucking question if you could believe
Brownie's
it or not.
original nickname of being Donut, straight up truth.
What?
DJ Donut. He was known as DJ Donut. Not a truth.
That's what River calls it. Yeah.
No, but the Disco Biscuit beat was probably the only truth.
Well, but I believe also true is that you were critical in introducing some of these guys to each other in the first place. Is that not correct?
I brought Brownie to the conversation. I was friends with Brownie. We met in the quad. He sold me an Absolute Vodka-inspired pen T-shirt within 3 minutes of me arriving. We became friends. And then I met Sam, who we had classes together. I think I met him through Mark Mango, actually. Remember Mango?
Dude, I knew you before you knew any of these punks.
No. I met you through Sam.
You met me through
you gotta
Mark
meet
Mango.
Barber. Did I meet you through Mark Mango? I remember when I first met you, though, you were wearing a lab coat, a cowboy hat, and you were tramping around the quad. And that was my first visual introduction of you.
I was a big personality just to get going. I was happy to be away from my parents.
I feel that.
A lot of people get to college and they're just like, oh, I miss my parents. I got to college and was like, I don't miss my parents at all.
I think that's how we all found each other. We were so psyched to be away from our parents.
I was like, this is wild. I could smoke weed and then put on a cowboy hat and then go to bioengineering lab and then go to Atlantic City after that. This is cool.
It was super cool.
That was fun. Oh, man. But the thing to note is that Kevin and I had a whole process where we wrote all the twists and turns of Bassist for a Day together, and it was the first kind of like seminally unique Disco Biscuit production / composition for the band, I would think. I mean, we were doing some original stuff back then, but Bassist for a Day was the showstopper out the jump. And Kevin, we wrote that song literally together the whole time. And there was, I remember. we're like White Dog, like getting food, talking about the do part.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, and then we got up and left, and we didn't pay for our food. We got up and went back to the house to finish that weird slow part.
But I do remember it was initially called Bassist for a day because I was playing bass for my contribution, and I don't play bass.
That's song by Frank Zappa. This one right here is called Bassist for a Day.
So it was like me picking up this thing and making weird things, and then you being like, "Oh, that's a cool little thing. Let's borrow that." And I remember leaving and coming back the next day and coming up with that final section, the bump 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 ba-da-da-da, bump bump bump, and like hearing that and like trying to play it on the bass and had no capacity to do it, and you were able to figure it out on the guitar.
Yeah, that is such a Kevin line. Dun 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 dun. It's such a you line.
Listen, as somebody who obsessed over Mike's song, as somebody who is a Mike song fan, that was my Mike song tribute.
So how did you guys start writing music together? Was there a shared love of Fish or another band that you guys bonded over?
Definitely a shared love of Fish. I mean, Barber introduced me to a ton of weird music. He and Sam introduced me to Fugazi, which for like a suburban Jewish boy, like growing up in like Bergen County, we just didn't toe dip at Fugazi. You introduced me to Prong. You introduced me to, Sam was obsessed with that one Bella Fleck album because of like the crazy Sinister Minister, Victor Wooten bass line in it. So like through these dudes, there was like this Mr. Bungle, which was awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, we just all started like listening to all that music together. I mean, I remember seeing Fish on Walnut Street in that little venue. What was it called? It was right next to the Chili's.
Cabaret.
Yes, Chestnut Cabaret.
Yeah, it was.
We saw them
like
there. We saw
people.
And then we saw the Radiators, and then we saw Stanley Jordan. Yeah. So we were listening to fucking everything at the time. So I think
Stanley Jordan was like the greatest guy for me as a guitar player. I used to love everything he did.
Still makes no sense to me what he does.
No sense at all, but incredible sounds.
Incredible sounds.
So, Kevin, I know that you now are very much focused on your guitar playing, but were you playing music back then as well?
No. The guitar playing was like a product of like COVID. And like me actually...
What? You've had a guitar for like 20 years, dude.
You gave me my first guitar. The Strat that I have, you gave me my first guitar.
Oh, did
that black and white Strat. Man. I still have it. I finally swapped out the pickups on it, and I put in like these old like Fender Texas Blues style pickups, so it's like really crunchy and scrappy now.
Yeah. I stole that guitar, and it was hot, and I had to get rid of it.
Is that why you gave it? Yeah. And you're like, is that why the cops showed up in my place? They were like, dude,
I gotta get rid of this fucking thing before somebody gets me.
It's burning in my hands. I can't even hold it. It's so hot. No, you came to me in New York with it when we were living like on 43rd between 10th and 11th, and it was a birthday gift.
Yep, whatever that was. Yeah.
So I knew how to play
too hot for Philly for that guitar.
I learned how to play 5 chords for like 25 years, and I was finally like, what's the 7th? Should I learn about this other thing?
So you weren't really a musician, but you guys were writing songs. You weren't a bassist, but you were writing the bass part. How did you get the confidence to sit down and do this? Like, where did it come from? Was there just a sense of it's not going to stand in your way, that you don't actually know music? But
I mean, I sort of have applied that to life. I mean, we're friends. We would hang out and do stuff and tell jokes and the great thing about being friends with Barber is like, he usually is sort of like one of those great and yes people. Like, you guys know how like an improv, like the whole conversation is you say and yes to an idea. And Barber's great at and yesing. So we were just fucking around. He had instruments. He was playing music all the time. I don't think he was really thinking that we were writing like this epic song. He was just like, we were riffing and hanging out. And it sort of evolved into something that ended up really cool, but you guys also changed a lot of it. You added all those like really cool sort of like sitar sounding guitar lines that like gave it that different flavor eventually.
Well, what were some of the influences that you were drawing on back then? Because, yeah, I mean, I don't think you thought at the time, let's write the Disco Biscuits Dark Star or Tweezer, you know, like the big freeform jam vehicle that the moment that the opening notes start playing, everyone realizes this is the moment. Mm-hmm. But, you know, when I listen to Bassist, I always hear there are kind of like Spanish sounding elements, especially those earlier versions had a very sort of Miles Davis Sketches of Spain mood in the early part. John, there was even a narration. You would do like a spoken word thing about being in El Paso and drinking mezcal at a gas station.
There's a shack in El Paso. Small place, they serve drinks there on the side of the road, have a little gasoline and a tow truck. You go there and you sit down, sit in the chair, and really the only thing I have to drink is tequila. Pretty much it. So you go there and you sit down and you have a glass of mezcal, and there was one day that this random guy was in there and he had his mezcal and he just drank it and he realized there was nothing more for him to do. There was nowhere to go. No one to see, no job, no nothing. So he just turned around and walked.
Like what? Because Bassist for a Day it could be the Consummate Biscuits song, but it also could be the weirdest fucking song that was ever written. Like, what is this song?
I think for me, it's like I knew nothing about music. So I was like, this sounds cool. And we were listening to stuff at the time that had no true definition of like linear form. We weren't listening to pop songs. We were huge into Fish at the time. We enjoyed those 10, 12-minute sort of explorations. Barber always listened to classical music. I remember when I first met you, one of the earliest times, you were getting like classical charts from somebody to like bring back to your room. So like it was a hodgepodge of influences. I mean, we're listening to hip hop. We were, you know, at that time, Far Side was like on our radio all the time. So like, I think it was just like, this sounds cool. Here's another idea. Barber was the genuine musician. So he'd be like, okay, that's cool. Let me connect these things. And then eventually I feel like you filled in the house from the framework, right?
Yeah, we were listening to a lot of Coltrane in those eras.
All right, we had those jazz courses.
Some Rites of Spring was in there. So that's why it's like kind of weird. I was putting that half-step Indian scale in everything I was doing back then. I mean, that's literally like all the licks for Bizarre Escape, Shimmy, do-loo-do-loo-do-do-do-do-do-do. Like, I just really like that scale. I've always liked that scale. And so it was something that I would do. It was very vibey. You know, Kevin was like an artistic person. I mean, Kevin was always talking about movies. Like, it was movie this, movie that, this scene of that. I never thought of a movie in any way. I never thought of a camera. You know how some people can watch movies and not realize there's a dessert tray somewhere? And whenever I watch a movie now, sometimes I think about the dessert tray. Sometimes I don't. Kevin is one of those guys that's like everything from the cameras to the guy with the microphone to the different shots to the machines that hold the cameras to the camera that's mounted in a window of a car that drives by. He was explaining to me all these different things while we were watching these movies, like your classic Goodfellas, your classic, like, what's the Harvey Keitel movie where he looks in the mirror and talks to himself for an hour? What? Taxi Driver, right? Taxi Driver. We watched Taxi Driver for the first time together. So that's where Kevin's art was at, was that kind of stuff, like dark movies that, you know, a kid from the farmland of New Jersey like me had never heard of before.
We wanted like Bad Lieutenants. We wanted weird... I mean,
Man Bites Dog. Do you remember that movie?
Of course.
Dude? Woo, that was crazy.
I got charged a lot in late fees from the video store for Man Bites Dog.
So as much as we were into music, we were also into movies because I didn't even have
Repo
cable.
Man. Like we would have like a great VHS sort of like circle going between you, me, and Sam. Sam initially wanted to be a filmmaker too. Like he was very much close to being a filmmaker, and we would all. I mean, eventually, Sam, John, Mark, and I all lived in the same building, 4015 Baltimore Street, which was off campus. It was like our senior year. And I was on the 4th floor. I shared a balcony with BARBER. I'm with Brownie. Sam was on the 2nd. I think you were on the 1st, right?
I was on the 1st floor, yeah.
Yeah, and that just became like a trading post. Like, Sam's got King of New York. Okay, great. Go down and grab it. Kev, you grab such a, okay, great. I'm going to go grab it. So you got the Jimi Hendrix, live and whatever. I forgot what that Jimmy doc was, which was amazing. And we would just swap things all the time. And it just sort of became like the conversation.
Yeah, and listen, Nicks were on. I mean, that's basically what we would do. And there was a lot of art in the movies. There was a lot of scoring in the movies, but we were all like artistic people. So it never occurred to me that we couldn't write music together. I guess.
Yeah, BARBER scored my first short.
And yes, Lettish, I believe. Is
Lettish.
that the name of? So to put it all on the table.
You found it. That was a great little line, dude.
Kevin is amongst other things. Kevin is amongst other things today a filmmaker, a director of documentaries, narrative films. He is a novelist. The main reason that we have him on today is to talk about his forthcoming novel, which will be released in May. But Kevin is an artist in the truest sense, working across a variety of media. And yes, someone with whom John has been collaborating since the start. And I think collaboration has been sort of the secret theme of Touchdowns All Day for the last year and a half. Your collaboration with Joey, your collaborations with Cloud Chord, with all the different musicians and artists you work with, and the way in which creativity is amplified and multiplied when you find someone who is not only simpatico, but who brings a different perspective and skill set. So Kevin's flair for the visual and visual storytelling, your musical background, you guys have been coming together and producing since literally 1995 when you guys wrote Bassist. So another thing that I know, and I have so many things, I have so many notes. I've been brainstorming on this interview for so long, but I was doing my research, and I think that an important part of this whole story, as it was conveyed to me, has to do with the fraternity that you guys were in and the musical influences that you were able to absorb through that very international, unusual cohort of people who were all brought together there. So do I have it correctly? Zeta Psi was the name of the fraternity?
Zeta Psi was.
What exactly was Zeta Psi?
I mean, a unicorn. It was a very special unicorn. It was this cool place. I pledged my freshman year and I got in. And there was a friend we had in common, this guy, Rob Haney, who was actually the one who's contributed very greatly to the name, the Disco Biscuits.
Yes.
He was an older dude. He took a liking to me. He wanted me to join. I luckily, strangely got in because I knew nobody. And like they were voting like 3 days before like I first showed up. So the fact that I even got the vote was weird. And I joined freshman year and I just met these amazing group of dudes that like were from Hong Kong and Spain and all over the world. And I remember sophomore year, I went to BARBER. I was like, you got to rush this place. You're going to love it. And then BARBER rushed and then he became part of it too. And it was just like this great sort of, it was a magnet in a lot of weird ways. And like, I think a lot of influence comes from just like magnet experiences in general or places. And this was a magnet for like people that wanted to have fun. We're constantly looking for like curious things to do. And through them, I mean, BARBER, you probably got like your first legitimate taste of like techno and sort of electronic music because we had a couple of guys from Britain and Hong Kong that were really listening to like Orb at the time, Orbital, Thievery Corporation, like more of those flavors of type of music. And I mean, when you first started the Biscuits, it was like Santana and Allman Brothers. So like where you are now is a very far away. So I would imagine a sprinkling of that introduction probably filtered through what you're doing now.
Well, we used to do a kick-ass whipping post, and we used to do a really, really good Soul Sacrifice.
I still wish you guys would actually play a Soul Sacrifice every once in a while. It was really fun,
that one. We used to do those every night. It was weird. You and I were the only I mean, I guess Mike Levin is from America, but like besides him, you and I were the only guys from America in the whole house, it seemed like to me. I mean, everybody was from some other place with some weird accent, with a whole different upbringing. It was this weird, like dark building in the middle of, it was like they were trying to kick them off campus for 100 years and they couldn't because Dracula owned the building or something like that. And like, that was the vibe. And we just ended up in there somehow. And it was a bunch of like just weird
they threw
people.
Amazing parties, like unbelievably cool parties. Barber was a consistent, they also were known for their parties and then for their pool tournament, which Barber was, I think, the first person ever to win it back to back.
I won it as a pledge. I'm the only person to ever win as a pledge, to my knowledge. And
that is correct.
I did win it back to back. One of them, I was really, really tripping on acid. And I couldn't miss. I just couldn't miss. I don't know what to tell you. I was calling shots across the table.
Dude, I was there because I was the one who threw the things, and you hit a long bank shot.
It was insane.
That was unbelievable.
Yeah, if social media existed, I would have been able to go pro after that game.
You at least would have gotten dates for the rest of spring.
It was crazy. And
another funny footnote is that my partner in that tournament was Brownie.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We I think we made it to the semis, you know.
Nice. Yeah, I won that. That was fun. But really just a great group of guys. They didn't listen to any American music at all. Santana, Grateful Dead, Fish, you name it. Bruce Springsteen, like Phil Collins, like whatever, Nirvana, like whatever was going on, they did not listen to it. Biggie Smalls, they did not listen to that. They listened to only this like weird dance music, which was like this, and they all listened to it, which was so weird.
Yeah.
So it was a weird bunch of guys because you could not convince them that music
there was like
made
a
by
brief
Americans
moment
was
of
good.
There was like a brief Metallica moment when the Black Album came out, I remember.
Yes, they
Outside
all liked
of that, it was like we'd be hanging.
It was real rock
and
roll.
Real rock, that dirty rock. But
yeah, they like AC/DC and like hard rock every once in a while. Jizz was into that stuff.
And that's how you met. But Jizz was huge too because he introduced you to the
Simon
Spungle
Bosford.
guys.
Yeah. He introduced me to Simon in his like room before the Disco Biscuits were even a band. He showed me this magazine from London, and it was like the master of the synthesizer, Simon Bosford. and I was just like, who's this guy? And then he played me some of that stuff, and I was like, oh, wow, this was his hallucinogen stuff, which is wild stuff. And, so it was interesting to then connect with Simon and actually like become friends with Simon, make an album with Simon a bunch of years later. And Jeremy's always been like tight with those guys somehow. I think small world over there in London. There's only like 8 people, so they all know each other.
Well, you mentioned Mark Brownstein, your pool partner. Well, Deb Brownstein is actually happens to be here right now. And she was regaling us with some of these stories last night. And she said, as a young hippie hanging out with you guys at Zeta Psi, she was very much of the Dead, the Fish persuasion. And she was hearing these weird sounds coming from the rooms. And she said, I remember at first we were a little skeptical. We didn't know, what is this stuff? We had never heard this sort of music before. But it slowly started seeping its way into the rotation. We started hearing it. We started understanding it. It started making more sense until the point where it became the primary thing that you guys were getting excited about. Like that was the new thing. That was the new sound that you hadn't heard anywhere else before. And of course, then it gets thrown in the hopper with all the jam bands and Santana and Fugazi and everything you've been listening to your whole lives becomes part of the stew that as you guys start creating your own music, starts to show those influences, that international melting pot that's taking place in the halls of Zeta Psi.
That feels pretty accurate.
I like that.
Yeah, I remember like going like freshman year to see like Lollapalooza, and by the time like senior year rolled around, we were like chasing raves in New Jersey. With Chris
we used to go to
McGarry.
raves all the time. One of the guys on our floor Vayu was a little older than us. He had a sweet car parked in the city,
best.
and he used to take us to the tunnel in New York City to
In
go to
record time.
like real raves back when those were the only raves on the East Coast. And we used to go to the tunnel like every couple of weeks. We'd go to the tunnel and like stumble back somehow. Like barely make it back. This is a nightmare. We used to have to like sneak our way in and stuff. So yeah, I was very lucky from that regard that we got to see so many different kinds of music, and people were very, very. I remember just trying to convince people that music was good and that they were like, no, you're wrong. This is good, and they would put on some other stuff. We used to have like bar brawls over different kinds of music back in the day, like the Orb and stuff like that.
Dude, there was that stereo we'd always be fighting over down by the pool table.
And those guys loved Little Fluffy Clouds. And
They loved Little Fluffy
oh my God. And one night they were playing Little Fluffy Clouds on repeat. And I plugged my guitar in and put it on 10 and just took like the most atonal John Coltrane solo over the song. And I wouldn't stop. And eventually somebody had to pull the plug out of the wall. And it's not a bad song, but like when you're listening to like You Enjoy Myself, it's hard to be like, yeah, Little Fluffy Clouds is amazing, guys. It's really
completely.
Great. You know?
So, Kevin, do you remember when you first realized that John had a band?
Yeah, I mean, I
was there.
I was there. Like they used to play all the time together. I mean, back in the day, much different vibe. Sam was initially a bassist, and Sam was a great bassist, and he was like playing like flea level type of like slapping. He was like playing Bella Fleck. I mean, like Victor Wooten's type of like stylings. He would pick it up, and Sam's just like one of those naturally musical dudes. He was actually still a good guitarist, and he had all the good gear. I remember he had like a Les Paul and like a Spectre, but like all the good shit. And like I remember, and I wish I knew where this fucking video was. We shot it with Matt Williams. It was you and Sam playing in his room, the two of you guys jamming, and like we shot it on like mini DV or Super VHS. I forgot what the format was, but it was like 92, 93, super early. But you guys were playing always. Brownie was a little bit older. He took off some time and went to the new school, and he really got serious about playing bass. Before that, can I tell the story about you sort of like ripping apart the record that Brownie played for you with Bonnie Somerville covering the Janis Joplin? I just said it. It was a funny moment where like Barber was hearing this thing, like this Janis Joplin cover that Brownie was in a band in high school. And you were like, yeah, it's cool. And then he went like to new school and he came back and he became like this amazing, fully formed sort of like on his way bassist with all this new knowledge. And that's when you guys really began to sit down and sort of like create what you were doing. And like you'd start rehearsing at the fraternity. You had that downstairs area. Initially, you guys got a lot of grief because nobody's like, we don't want to have a band rehearsing here. And then eventually they were like, let the band play.
It was so annoying for them.
And then from there, yeah, it was like Soul Sacrifice, Frank Zappa. I mean, you guys used to play a fucking killer version of Mary Had a Little Lamb, the Stevie Ray song. Was it In Search of Elizabeth Reed too you guys used to cover?
In memory of Elizabeth Reed. Do, 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 do.
Such a beautiful song.
We did all the Allman Brothers songs. Those were we did, but those were really good. Those are some sweet songs. That's a great Allman Brothers song. We did a bunch of Dead songs. We did the other one, and we did Help Slip. We did the fugue part of Reba, the do 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 do. We did that. We didn't do the rest of the song.
You like a fugue? You've always been a fugue fan.
I mean, I like playing long stretches of music. I mean, I'm a classical guy, so anything that sounds classically inspired is cool by me. And we did practice in the house, which was annoying for you. I apologize for that.
I didn't care. I was like your biggest fan initially because I love the classic rock. So the classic rock. Did I just like sound like an old fucking dude? But you guys, I remember I legitimately would be like clapping and screaming when you guys did your Soul Sacrifice jam. And every time Sam would be like, I hate playing that song. It sucks.
Yeah, he hated that fucking song.
Because he'd have to take
Doesn't it have the solo?
I know. I think he was just, he hated the song. He was always like, I hate that song. He fucking hated it.
Was great at it, but never liked that song. But it is worth saying Sam was effortlessly amazing at the bass, like crazy amazing. All the slapping, like, and it was just effort and flawless, like he'd been doing it since he was 4. Yeah, and so it was crazy that Sam moved to drums and Mark played bass because Sam was so great at the bass. But Mark has a great head on his shoulders for how to jam. So it was definitely when Mark moved to bass, and Sammy was a great drummer too. So when Mark went to bass and Sammy went to drums, like things kind of blew up on the dance floor at that point because the jams had a pulse and a rhythm and moved really well from section to section suddenly.
And so then when did you guys start? Because I remember you recording your first album. That was... Like, I remember going...
In the house, yeah. In the house, the library, yeah.
No.
Little
we went
4-track machine.
But then we eventually went to, like, a proper recording studio, and I remember specifically being there for, like, the Barfly recording.
Yes, so Encephalous Crime we did at
Encephalous Crime.
At the ghetto studio in Philly, that place was ghetto, dude. But it was
it was also yeah.
I mean the equipment was so nice, the price was right, and we made a pretty good sounding album there. I think that album still sounds all right.
I think so. You played the green guitar for Barfly, and I remember very much like showing up
Moneybags.
Not under great probably driving circumstances, and listening to you guys put that on tape. And it was actually pretty cool because that was like the first time I ever heard you guys actually think about things from the production standpoint. And like, it was interesting I remember you really deconstructing that solo. And I think that might have actually been a comp, if I remember correctly, where you comped a couple of different together and then came up with that solo. Cause you were just like, you were barefoot, you were bouncing around. You're like, the first part of that is working, but then it falls apart. It was very cool to see that side of your guys' brain for the first time.
I later found out that that's the Eddie Van Halen method, is you take 5 really sick solos, and then you mute and unmute them to the end, and then you make a solo out of the bunch of them all together, which is why Eddie's stuff is so unhinged, because it's just like one huge scale run, and then he skips to the next patch, and it's a little melody, and he skips to the next one, and he's got another unhinged crazy run. And so, but we were doing it that way. We were working with these 2 guys who basically were just like Philly studio rats, and but they had a great board and a big room we could put the whole band in, and it was pretty cool. And you were there for that. And also, it is worth noting that there is a B for L chain going around right now, Biscuits for Life. And Kevin kind of started that chant, didn't you, Kevin?
I may have started that in San Francisco.
Didn't you start the Biscuits Forever
He's been
chant?
chained.
That was at the Great American Music Hall.
No, it was way before that. It was at the
Was
Middle
it way
East.
before that?
Do you
Was it
remember
at
the Middle East? Yeah, that little place
completely.
downtown. You used to
I
go
love
Disco
that place.
Biscuits forever. If you listen to
Yes.
like the oldest Disco Biscuit tapes, and you
Oh,
hear
my
somebody
God.
saying Disco Biscuit forever on the tape, that's Kevin.
That was Kevin?
There we go. That was my other contribution.
Yeah.
My apologies, world.
No, it's good.
No, I'm glad you guys are
worked
on the
out.
forever. I just meant, I had a very high pitched voice at the time. I'm sure the tenor has gotten.
So, Kevin, after school, I know that you eventually found your way out to AFI many years later and kind of started your career as a filmmaker. In the intervening years, as John and the band were kind of dedicating themselves full time to getting the Disco Biscuits off the ground, what were you up to, and were you aware of what was going on with the band as they started to graduate from the fraternities and Smokey Joe's and the local Philly bars to Wetlands, and then eventually national touring and becoming the phenomenon that they are?
Yeah, I mean, I moved to New York. I saw you guys a bunch of times at Wetlands. I remember you guys playing that bottom Wetland stage and just like dripping sweat a couple of times. I mean, we were in touch. Barber would come to New York all the time. I'd go to Philly. When I did my first short, that was recorded in Philly. You guys were all living like in this row house. You just got your new digital performer computer, and it was like you, me, and Magner, and like literally it was an amazing exercise in like watching Barber disappear. And then like 5 hours later, he'd be like, here, check this out. And he'd have like this fully formed thing. And then like Magner would sit in and you would just play the video and he'd be on like the keyboard and he would play like something in real time. And Barber would be like, that's great. That's cool. Awesome. And then we stitched together this weird thing, but we're completely in touch.
Lettish you were talking about?
This is Lettish.
Okay. Cause this is the first, before podcasts even existed in like 1999 or 2000, I had some sort of like internet radio show for the band, and Barber sent me a CD that he had written in pen, Lettish. And it was like, oh, this is a score I did for my friend Kevin's movie. And I played it on this proto podcast in like 2000 that you had to like dial up on AOL or something to listen to. But what was the concept of that? Because Kevin, I think you told me about this recently, and it sounded like when you told me this, the concept behind the short film now, it sounded incredibly prescient, like science fiction that's like in 1999 seems like would never happen. But today's like, yeah, we do that every day.
Yeah, it was therapy-paced science fiction. It was basically Lettish was the name of the short. It was an acronym for a live-in ego tempering instrument to sustain happiness. And basically the premise was everybody had their own personal therapist that they would walk through life with. So if you go to a restaurant, you'd have your therapist. They would have a section separate for the therapist. And if you had an issue, you'd walk over to the therapist. They'd guide you on how to handle it. You'd come back. And Barber was like the only person that genuinely got the humor. Not only did he do the score, he also invented like these weird like sound effects for like how the Lettishes communicated. Do you remember you invented that for when they like spoke to each other and nodded? You'd created like these weird little, it was super fun. And it was like, I mean, it was just the production was a fucking free for all. We just rented this house in like Sonoma with like 12 actors and like a crew and shot for a week. But yeah, I mean, it was a blast, like to be able to sit with your friends and like, I remember him laughing and being like, "Oh, okay, this has something." If he's laughing after watching it for the 30th time.
Well, I mean, I was wondering, like, is it like the Peanuts, where the Peanuts are the teachers go wonk 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 wonk? So I thought the Lettishes probably did something like that. And
it was a great ad.
I came up with like a space sound for them that was similar to that.
And the funny thing is, the person who ended up finally cutting the film and doing the open animation was this guy, Keith Kozloff, who was Brownie's best friend at the time. So there was like a lot of overlap. Keith is a filmmaker. He went on to produce and direct a lot of stuff. And
football games. I mean, NFL football games.
Yeah, he's a badass. So, but it was like us collaborating, like the tentacles spread. It was fun. Everybody just wanted to make funny shit and do cool shit.
Well, Kevin, you eventually made your way out here and attended AFI. You've been working in the industry in a variety of different ways, editor, shooting, on location, producing for years now. You got a couple of films come out in 2023, both of which were incredibly well received. First, Marisol, a fiction film, 100% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. I looked that up today.
That's cool.
It did really well on the festival circuit. It is a coming of age story about a 17-year-old Mexican-American girl who is accused of a crime and finds out that she is undocumented and has to go on the run. And it couldn't be more of the moment. It's perhaps even more relevant in 2025 than it was in 2023. Kevin, how did that project come to be? How did you get attached to Marisol?
I mean, it was something we developed with our production company. We had a really great writer we were working with. She was this young woman in her mid to late 20s, and she just had a great POV on life. And it initially started, we wanted to remake a movie called, I can't believe I'm blanking. It was with Helen Slater and Christian Slater.
The Legend of Billie Jean?
The Legend of Billie Jean. We wanted to do a remake of that and find a way to update it. And the premise for that film is she gets accused of a crime she didn't commit, goes on the run, and has to eventually prove her innocence. At the time, I mean, I'm Mexican-American. My mom is first generation. My family grew up in Texas. It's culturally something that I've always been very deeply in touch with. And on that side, there was a lot of politically sort of activated people that were activists and professors and academics, and they help people across the border and all sorts. So it was a life that I had tangential knowledge of. And it just eventually, transformed, though I still would love to do a remake of The Legend of Billie Jean. I think that would be amazing. It sort of transformed into this more serious thing. And it just sort of used that root kernel and then became something that obviously, especially now, has gotten very political. But at the heart of it was just really about a young girl managing a tough circumstance.
So it is as I mentioned, it is an incredibly politically relevant subject, but it's also evident. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that your first feature?
That's my first narrative feature.
Your first narrative feature. It is incredibly apparent to me watching it that you had a lifetime worth of ideas about camera, about mise en scène, about how you wanted your first film to look, because there are some really beautiful moments in there that serve the story, but also to me serve to show that the director is thinking about this not just as an exercise in political storytelling, but rather as something, as capturing very beautiful moments. The opening sequence in particular. How to talk about putting a film like that out in 2023, not just because of the political content of it, but also just the film industry is something I know from my own work. It is very challenging to get a film distributed, to get an independent film noticed, to get eyeballs, to get it out into circulation. So what was it like putting out a film of this nature in that context?
I mean, it sucked. It was brutal. And that came off of us shooting in the middle of COVID. So we were deep in Austin and the surrounding areas, middle of COVID. The first hour and a half every morning would be everybody getting tests. In the middle of that, then Austin had the most incredibly unique, bizarre snowstorm that literally shut down the city. So we're a week into production. We have to shut down filming for 3.5 weeks because people don't have water. They don't have electricity. So we're dealing with that. So by the time we were done with the film, it was already such an adventure that release was just like, okay, we know it's going to continue to be challenging. The quick answer it was super challenging. Political, we consciously didn't want to cast it with known people. I'd say 95% of the actors in that, it's their first time film, the first time that they actually ever even were in anything. Our lead, before that she was in like church productions. This was the first time she ever auditioned for something. So that was one of actually the things we wanted to commit to, was finding real people or people that really felt like they could represent the characters as accurately as possible and cast from there. So we did everything wrong in a lot of ways. I insisted on shooting on Super 16, which means that like you have to get a specific crew, a specific camera. It means that like I myself in the past have shot, so I couldn't just pick up, load a camera, change the negative, swap it out. Like everything was like super challenging. So in retrospect, I made a lot of terribly challenging decisions, but I wouldn't have done anything differently. I mean, we wanted to ground the film. I come out of documentary. I wanted something that felt real and authentic. I knew that area. I had family that lived in very similar circumstances. So for me, it was always about taking the Cassavetes approach of taking people, improvise, put them in real situations, and seeing if you can capture a little bit of some lightning, and being available always to the mistakes or the accident. Like so much of what's in the movie are like one-off takes where somebody like improvised for a second and we're like, oh, that's the nugget, and let's build a scene around there. It's actually very similar to what you do, John, with your music now. It's like you find a riff and you're like, oh, wait, that's a nugget. Let's see what we can build out of that. And you look at our film, and if I brought the editor on, like most of the takes in it are the last take because it was like, okay, go have fun. So,
I mean, it doesn't surprise me that the Rotten Tomatoes people like the movie so much. I mean, I watched it. I thought it was gripping and great. I thought you traveled to get the snow scenes. And do you want to tell everybody the story on how the snow scenes were made?
Yeah, I mean, that was the first day of the snowstorm in Austin. And when I say a snowstorm, they got like 8 to 12 inches.
Snowstorm.
Yeah, this is the one that shut down the entire grid in Texas.
Yeah.
The Ted Cruz going on vacation snowstorm.
Yes, Ted Cruz is like, COVID, snowstorm, I'm out of here. Peace, dudes.
And the irony is that section of the film is actually supposed to take place in Minnesota.
I would have sworn that was filmed on location in Minnesota. I thought you picked up the whole production.
Oh my God. I would have loved it. The production almost quit on me that day, actually, because like nobody in Texas is used to snow. So like the day before, we're like, it's going to snow, bring warm clothes, bring extra layers, whatever you think. We're shooting outside. Like I saw it as like an opportunity. I'm like, oh my God, we have this once in a lifetime snowstorm. We're going to shoot the fuck out of it. And whatever's in the film is all we shot, because the last shot, literally, I look over at the writer and the producer and she's like, this is getting crazy. And then I look over at the AC, and the canned air, which he uses to clean the gate of the camera, froze to his hand. And he's shaking his hand like this, trying to get it off. And I went to the AD and I was like, that's it, we're cutting it. And we ended the day. So like everything in there is, and the inserts in the car when she comes in, we actually shot like 3.5 weeks later, and we fogged up the windows. We put in like little spray outside the windows, like it's deep focus, so you can't really see it. But like that's all movie magic to match it. And we had to pick the time of day so that the lighting was consistent and all that type of stuff. So that was our version of a comp, John. Our Eddie Helen.
That was rolling with the jam right there. You know,
that was rolling with the jam.
Yeah. And the performers you mentioned, you as much as possible cast people who had less screen experience. I remember seeing a lot of positive reactions to the leads. And I think that you had mentioned, Kevin, that they had their careers had been taking off right afterwards.
Yeah. I mean, one of the younger male leads, he got a lead in a film that was produced by the Hamilton crew right after. And our lead, she won an award for Best Actress at the Twin Cities Film Festival. And from that, she got management. And now she's been in a bunch of TV shows and shorts. And like, I mean, they're all unbelievably fun, cool, natural performers. And it was fun to like lean into that. Like, I love that we didn't really block them. And that it was more about, you know, we cheat. We do what we shoot with a wider lens, so it gives them more room to move around and like focuses and doesn't like. We sort of try to own that, and I mean that was, I think, the best decision I made amidst a lot of really, you know, probably challenging ones for myself.
So let me make sure I understand this. You're saying you didn't really block them. You mean you didn't like get in their way in some way. You didn't block them, meaning you didn't give them like places on the floor where they had to be to speak to each other.
we gave them broad things, but depending on the type of filmmaking it is, like that can be a really rigorous process because you have a lens has focal distances. You have to rehearse things sometimes really specifically so that you can get your focus marks so that they're getting the proper lighting for the exposure. Like it could be a really rigorous type of like specific thing. Stanley Kubrick, everything is blocked. Everything is down to like the millimeter. John Cassavetes, people that like, I can mention these people. I don't want to sound pretentious, but like there's another approach where it's more like, okay, you broadly go here. The camera person understands what's happening, and then they have to follow. And the assistant, the AC, who's usually responsible for focus pulling, is just much more involved in the decisions because they can go left, they can go right. They could wait to sit down a second later. So it was really about giving the general pacing of the scene. And then like, you probably do this too. Like the worst thing we can also do is like over rehearse something because then it loses its sort of like energy.
Totally.
So it's like, okay, let's feel this out. We understand that this is the beat. We understand we're going to raise it up here. We're going to lower it down here. We're going to need a little bit of space here. Let's try it a few times. Don't act it out. Like just go through it at like 30% so you can feel it for yourself and then save it for when you do it and try to see if you can find something. And if you find something, follow that. And if you have they were great. The actors were great because we made them become friends. So like if you're making a joke that's off script, I know you well enough to make a joke then too. So like we gave them that latitude as well. And I mean, I couldn't imagine making a fiction film any other way. And we're in development on some right now. And I would like to just much more lean into that approach and see how much further you can push it a little bit.
Yeah, so it's almost like a curb your enthusiasm type of approach, but for a serious drama. I mean, she's walking into location after location, fearing for her life the whole time, trying to see if this person that she's just meeting is an ally or an enemy over and over and over again. So
we did have a great script to start with. And somebody who is really good at like understanding the cadences of how younger people spoke and what those emotions could be. She was a very compassionate, like astute human. So like she framed the house really well. And a lot of times they ended up coming back to what was in the script because that was a great way of achieving it. And other times they would step off. Like once again, I would imagine like you guys do, like you have your chords, you have your melodies. If you step away from them too much, it's not a song, but you can jam within the song and still remind people that you're in that song.
Yeah. I mean, but we have a framework that we're working in. We have decisions that you can make that are going to elicit responses from the other people, which is just jamming 101. So, and what was the name of the screenwriter?
Claire Gallagher or Aguayo now.
So it's Claire. Was Claire writing kind of scene notes in the script, or was the script very much line for line?
I would say probably about 65% of what's in the film is from the script. And she would constantly be updating stuff. And she was on set. She was also a producer. So if we're having trouble with the scene, I'd be like, hey, write me something else. And she'd go and she'd come back. She'd be like, here's this. I'd listen to it. I'd shoot it. I'd keep in mind being like, okay, well, what if this feels like, I would always approach it with those fresh scenes being like, let me protect myself for edit. So like if I'm hearing something and it's too long or too short, like have I done a decent job directing this so that I can extract what's not needed and find space if I need to put something in there. So like a lot of the cutaways and like mini moments were like things I felt on set. Like there's a scene where the mother's in her daughter's room and she's not there. And it opens up with like a couple of shots of just like the room ambiently. And I remember leaning over to the DP right before the actress walked on. And I was like, just roll, give me a couple of quick shots. Cause I knew I need that space in edit.
Well, you mentioned the degree to which, you're working with less seasoned performers, you're improvising, you're letting things go, you're avoiding kind of rigid blocking. I would imagine a lot of this comes out of your background as a documentary filmmaker. And another film that you released in 2023, I Got a Monster, a documentary on the Baltimore Gun Trace Task Force, which some of you might be aware of was also the subject of David Simon's HBO miniseries, We Own This City. But it couldn't have been a more different project than Marisol. But hearing you talk about your approach to narrative filmmaking, I would imagine that there was a lot more that you were taking back and forth between those two projects than I would have imagined at first.
Yeah. And the funny thing is in that doc, I try to make it feel as fiction-like as possible with the editing and the music, because I didn't want it to feel like a staid, the tricky thing with docs is like, if you aren't actually there in the moment, it's tough to make something feel like it has stakes or like real emotional resonance. So this whole thing already happened. We got in like as they were putting the corrupt cops in jail, or the cops, whatever you want to call them. So this was going on for 12 years, and we were there for like literally the end of the sentencing or the court cases. So we had to go back and restructure everything in the past tense. And for me, I was just like, if we're going to do that, then I want this to feel like an action film. So we had aggressive music. I used aggressive cutting, aggressive sound effects, just as a way to sort of fight that feeling of watching something that is still talking heads or doesn't have sort of that immediacy of being able to witness people, which is what I love about documentaries, is that having the privilege to be next to somebody being vulnerable with you. And that is a really tricky thing to be able to document or witness, let alone, having the foresight to come in a story where that's evolving. So as soon as we got that mandate, I was like, and that project had a whole other set of circumstances too. We sold it twice. We had, Barry Levinson attached as an EP. It went through all these ups and downs, like about to get greenlit, in the final like negotiations of legal with Netflix. They cancel it, blah, blah, blah. So we ended up having all this footage we shot for the sizzle and just for like exploratory things that we had to reconvert into trying to make a feature out of. So that was like a long sort of journey too. But when we were getting it, I was like, we got to make this thing feel like exciting, pulse pounding, for like lack of a corny term.
Well, I mean, the final product reflects that. I was looking at some of the reviews for I Got a Monster, and the best one was on RogerEbert.com, where you got 4 out of 4 stars. And the review said it felt like a documentary combination of The Untouchables and The Wire. Yeah. Which right there, I mean, if I had just read that, I would be in. But having watched We Own This City, the David Simon version, and really been enchanted by that story and freaked out by it as well, to see your telling of that story, which was much more focused on the victims of the gun trace task force as opposed to the criminal cops themselves. I found it to be incredibly compelling. How was it, though, working on a project for a very long time, and apart from all of these trials and tribulations that you went through, to find out that David Simon and was it Pelicanos as well? Mm-hmm. The two, I mean, apart from Levinson, the two people synonymous with telling stories about crime and the streets of Baltimore have an HBO miniseries about to come out on the very same subject.
Well, there was also an HBO documentary that came out on the very same subject too. That,
oh God, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, that had a very soft release, and they were in production. We were literally shooting simultaneously, sometimes in different parts of the city, and we had some overlap on interviews and stuff like that. And that eventually got released on HBO. They were in production slightly longer than us, I think. I forget how it was. I mean, the David Simon thing's a trip, because like the whole time we're like, oh my God, we got to approach David Simon. We got to approach David Simon. Yeah. He'll be the perfect EP. And then he announces it. So like in our business, I mean, so much crazy shit happens. And part of me at this point is like, I remember when it happened and our writer collaborators told us about it. It went from like, fuck, to like, well, our instincts are actually pretty good, right? Like this means this is like sort of a cool story, and like we're sort of onto something. So let's just write it out. And we got so much love with that film, and the city of Baltimore could not have been more generous and good to us. And the writers and reporters that we worked on with this were just magnificent. And like that film, we could have thrown the towel away a bunch of times, but I remember the stakeholders from our company side was like, we can't not finish this. These people have been so generous with their time, with their emotions, with their information, with their families, that like, we have to finish this film at no cost. And it sort of became that thing, you know, you're not getting paid for times and you're still 4:00 in the morning trying to fix the edit and trying ways to color correct yourself until you can get that extra raise of money. And it's like, and we're really lucky too that our executive producers and financiers like really got behind the film. And it was all because like of the victims. Like I did not want to disrespect their belief in us doing what they went through, giving it some sort of justice.
Now, you mentioned that you had originally had Barry Levinson attached as a producer, but you did have a producer credit for Norman Lear, creator of All in the Family, Maude, The Jeffersons, basically the most
All of 1960s TV.
influential sitcom producer of the socially relevant sitcoms in the 70s and 80s. How did Norman Lear become attached to this project? How did you collaborate with Norman Lear?
We actually had another project we brought out with him a few years earlier. It was a fiction project about the Supreme Court. And my business partner and the producer on the film, Jamie Denenberg, she had a long-standing relationship with the head of his development. And I guess he eventually became the co-president of Norman's production company, Act 3. And we were in this really bizarre place where, in spite of like how great the reception has been, and we shockingly were able to like sell tickets. It got theatrical. We didn't get into any major film festivals. We got rejected by Sundance. We got rejected by Tribeca. I actually remember once I was at lunch with BARBER when we found out by Tribeca, and I threw like this little hissy fit at like a hot dog place when I got the info. But that's when you were living in Woodland Hills, dude. And like, but we just weren't going to quit on the film. And we eventually brought it. Jamie's like, listen, why don't we just approach Norman and see if he wants to come in? He does a lot of, you know, obviously socially conscious content. And we gave it to one of their development execs on a Friday, and we got a phone call on a Monday, which is really rare that somebody would watch something that quickly, being like, oh my God, we love this movie, we're in. And not only did Norman come in, but he also contributed additional money to help us get the movie out there, to help us with the distribution and getting it, you know, aware with people that normally wouldn't be tuned into this. And also because it didn't have the pedigree of a Sundance or something like that. A lot of amazing documentaries that I see all the time, if they don't find those labels, it's hard for them to get seen. And it was important for him and his wife as well, Lynn, who is also an EP on it, to help us get it seen.
Kevin, you've written a novel, Mountain Forgotten. It's going to be released in May. Pre-orders are going to start in May as well. This is big. I mean, I knew you as a filmmaker, documentary producer, involved in television production, but secretly all along you were writing a novel as well. What is the story of where this novel came from before we even get into the story of the novel itself?
I mean, I wanted to do it as a TV series. I had this idea, and I knew that very likely I could spend years, which we have, on a project and go through many iterations of something, attach people, get it close to being sold, possibly even being sold, then killed and all this type of stuff. And I just didn't want the story to disappear. So I was a creative writing major in undergrad, and I was like, you know what? Let me write this. And it started off sort of like in a pre-COVID blur. COVID came around. I had more time on my hand than I thought. And I just kept going back to it. And before I knew it, I had, 140,000 words. And I was like, oh shit, there's a beginning, middle, and an end here. Like, now I got to finish it. So it's been close to 5 years of lift on it in the spare time. And, I did have like a good run of like 4 months where I could just focus on this and get the beginning, middle, and end done. And then after that, it's just been like incrementally fixing it, trying to sell it, all these other things that came with it. And yeah, so now we're here, and it's surreal.
It's wild.
John, have you read Mount Forgotten?
I did. I read the early version. The version that I read, I was like, I can't believe you wrote this. Like, this is crazy good. And it just seemed like a real book. And like Kevin and I are friends, but I don't have any author friends. So it just seemed uniquely weird that he would write a real book. And
yeah, it is a real novel, like where there are beautiful passages of descriptive prose, character lineages that are explored over generations. There's lore, there's geography. Kevin, do you want to give a synopsis of the story, the elevator pitch for the book?
The elevator pitch is it's a multi-generational saga about the death of a marriage, the birth of a ski town, and an indigenous tribe caught in the middle.
You nailed it, Max, when you were like, there's lore. There's like, he goes deep on all these characters. There's a lot of character building. There's a lot of things about it that really take you into that world and give you, these like, as you can sort of tell you're like a film director in your spare time because there's so much color of the set and the scenes and who's there and why they're there. It's crazy.
I mean, this is why Barber's the best, though. Like, I gave it to probably 15 people. And outside of my amazing wife, Barber was actually the only one who read that initial draft.
I enjoyed reading it, so it is what it is.
Thank you, dude.
I don't read digital stuff very often, so I had, you know what I mean? Because he gave it to me in PDF, so I don't read in preview that much, but...
The book takes place in Four Tooth Bend, which is a Pacific Northwest ski town. Kevin, I know that a lot of it draws on your own biography, and I think if I understand correctly, you spent a bit of time ski bumming. Is that correct?
Yeah, I spent a year in Sun Valley bartending and catching early trips up the mountain.
I'm wondering if there are real people in your life who inspired some of the characters or the stories that found their way into Mount Forgotten.
Oh, definitely. I mean, yes, family members, friends, moments. There's a couple of quiet shout outs to Barber, the ski side of Barber's life. I mean, I make a Disco Biscuit shout out in there. There's like, we're talking about the gorge and moments. There's ketamine use. I will claim to have done research in that department. So like, it's a lot of it filters through the fun experiences that I've had and the people that I've come across. But, it is all the framework of it, though, is unlike those people. Like, I don't have somebody who's lived a life like the Bobby Mack character or the Bill Macklemore character. I have people that I think about visually when I'm writing those characters and the cadence of how they talk and how they behave. But, I don't know anybody who's actually gone through that journey. That was like just a fabrication of, I think, just a lot of media consumption over my time and being like, oh, how can we arc this person out? What can we do with this character so we feel like there's some growth in this section? I want this person to try to get to this point. Like, how do we get them there? So that just more is like, I think, a product of like the skills I've learned writing scripts, being an editor, and like those structural gifts.
Were there any novels or novelists that you drew inspiration from? I've always felt that this book's strongest point of comparison is to Ken Kesey's second novel, Sometimes a Great Notion, which is similarly set in the Northwest and about the kind of tensions between a very strong and hard patriarch and his offspring.
100% a reference. One of my favorite movies, one of my favorite books. I love that story. And without a doubt, strangely, my favorite book of all time, like a lot of people's, is 100 Years of Solitude. And sort of some of the magical realist elements and the ways that people sort of deal with nature. I don't want to obviously put myself on the pedal of Garcia Marquez, but like some of those themes, I definitely transposed emotionally onto this book and what he was writing about. There's a great writer called T. Corrigason Boyle who wrote this amazing book called Budding Prospects, which is about these weed growers in sort of like Northern California. and a lot of the shenanigans and like the tone of that I used for this. And then, once again, not trying to claim any comparison other than what I always found a point of inspiration was Tom Robbins and what he did, and just sort of like the ability to sort of sometimes throw jokes in weird places and take a serious moment and try to invert it a bit.
And the quirky characters, I definitely, Clover, it could be a Tom Robbins character, I feel like, very easily.
The greatest compliment I've ever heard in my life.
I understand your motivation for not wanting this story to go the way that so many film or screen projects go, which is you dump years of your life into developing it. You even maybe sell a script, and then a corporate merger takes place, or an executive wakes up on the wrong side of the bed and it just gets sent into limbo and it never emerges again. But what is it? What is the process of publishing a novel in 2025 like?
I mean, it was exhausting. I mean, I'm at a really high level agency with my film and TV stuff. They have a I have a book department. They were great in taking the initial read, and then they'd come back and be like, we don't know what to do with this. Like, we sort of specialize in famous people writing cookbooks, and the literary staff on that, like, they're really intrigued with it, but the story's a little bit, it's not easy to put your finger on in the sense of like defining it cleanly, though everybody really enjoys the read and the experience. So I try to get agents just in the book space for a year and a half. I have a folder of like 35 query letters approaching all these different people, begging anybody I know to make an introduction, and just going through the up and down on that. And then finally a friend put me in touch with sort of this like hybrid self-publishing publishing house, and they really responded to the book, and they're like, we want to be part of this. How can we do this with you? And that was really cool, because I get to drive the conversation in ways that like I wouldn't be otherwise. So I choose my release dates. I choose how I want to market it. They're going to deal with all the distribution. They're going to get all the reviews. So it's this really interesting thing where a lot of the skills I learned from being an independent film, I can now apply to this. Like, the corny filmmaker in me I got a bunch of like 90 and 2-minute teasers I'll be releasing over the next 4 to 6 weeks. Like, that would qualify as sort of like a trailer of sorts, because I want people to get excited and jacked about it. I know how to edit. I love that process. So I'm like, what can I do to help just spread some interest? So it's been fun, but we'll see. Like, I love doing this. I'm 2/3 through my next book, and like, I want to keep finding a way to carve out that time to write. It's awesome.
Are you staying in that universe?
This is a trilogy. This is the first book in it. I've begun outlining the second one. This next book is not. It sort of comes out of the documentary experiences of Baltimore and what it looks like to. That one, I really wanted to do something that was hard genre. Like, I love mystery thrillers. So I was like, what can I do in the private eye space that could have some sort of relevance? So this one is sort of like, it examines a crime within the private prison system and the fallout from that. So.
Like that.
Barber, you'll like it. It's like Jenkins on steroids.
Well, I think there's something to be said for, you don't see a lot of books nowadays that are just like kind of pure fiction for the sake of fiction, stories for the sake of stories. You get everything is kind of, at least everything that I've been reading is kind of leaning towards this nonfiction, this is your reality, this is our take on it type of, even the fiction is like, this is reality, this is our take on it. And it's nice to have, to get into a book where you meet the characters, you get invested in the characters, you see them make the great mistakes of the book and how they interact with each other and how it changes the way the other characters act. And it becomes, a very immersive process that I really haven't experienced in a while. So I was very happy to read this one, and I would definitely read the next one. I mean, if you got something in the private eye space, I I haven't read anything in the private eye space since I was a Litlin, so I'm into that. Let's bring that back.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I thank you, dude, for saying that. And I guess that's sort of what is at the heart of it. I just wanted to tell a fun story, right? It's like, why can't we just have fun stories anymore? You're 100% right. Everything's fucking weighted, and it's like, why can't I tell a story about this crazy town that like loves adventure and loves skiing and like cares about the world, and like, why can't I make that fun? Like, people ski and become ski bums and love to trip because we like that feeling of that adventure and that freedom. So like, that was really what was at the heart of it.
What is your process for a day of writing? Like, what is, for anybody out there who wants to become an author, and I know there's at least one listening, what is how do you wake up that day that you're going to write that day? What is is it tea? Are you alone in a barn somewhere? What is the,
it's a hotel. It's snowed in. He's there for 6 months with just his wife and his young son, who has a weird habit of talking to his finger. And there's this weird bear.
It depends on what phase. Like, you know, for me, writing has 3 phases. It's the outlining and like the pre-writing. There's the prose writing, and then there's the edit. So like the outlining, I do anywhere. Like, I'll do it at a coffee shop. I'll do it at dinner. With this one, I remember going to a lot of dinners by myself and just sitting there and having like lazy dinners and like just with my notepad and like writing stuff down. And then when the actual writing began, I did the chunk of it mostly out of my house in like these pretty manic 6 to 8 hour sessions a day for like 4 to 6 months. And then I got the draft done. And then the edit, which was like the most humbling part, you know, the first draft was like close to 140,000 words. This one's at 118,000. So I got rid of like 22,000 words. So that's more than 10% of the novel. And you write it and it doesn't feel that different, but like that, like I had to work really fucking hard. And then the editors that I worked with on it, giving me feedback. I mean, I had red lines that were like enough to make me freaking feel like I fell in a vat of blood. They were like, I'd get these things back and it was like nothing but red lines. And I'd be like, wow, they really don't like adverbs. That's like a thing.
Yeah.
So I'd like cut the adverbs, and then they'd have like long notes about like, this doesn't track as a character, but like, that's the cool part of the process is like, I got to be the most ultimately creative person and then give it to somebody else. And they got to be the most logical human being and be like, almost like an accountant being like, well, this line doesn't add up. You should really evaluate this. This is too heavy here. Your expenses here are too much. Like, dial back your entertainment. You need more like education. Like, so it was a really cool process. I learned a ton. And it was also great to be in the position of being like, not having to make those like hard sort of global decisions and to just get the feedback. Like, I was psyched at that point because so much of what I do is like, you raise the money, you find the project. It's like, I'm always sort of leading the conversation. It was really nice to like not have to. And people are much smarter than me and much better at doing this than me. So to like gain their wisdom was awesome. So, and then with the editing, like that was something that was really challenging because you cannot, like, there was a great quote by, I think it was Hemingway, and he said, write drunk, edit sober. And it's like, it's so unbelievably accurate. And I mean, I'm sober, so it wasn't a question of that, but it was a question of being like, he's saying, clear your mind so you can fucking focus as much as you possibly can on like the words and what you're trying to accomplish, and don't clutter it. Not to embarrass you, I actually, this last phase, I'd throw the Biscuits on in the background. There's a local library in town, and I'd go there. I'd throw you guys on a show, and there's something about your music, which I've actually recently found out that the tempo you guys play is actually used a lot for like the foundation for studying and for like focus related activities. Like there's electronic music hits a specific type of thing. I throw you guys on, and I'd literally go there for like 3 or 4 hours, and I would just nod and type. And I'm sure people next to me thought I was fucking crazy because I was doing like this nod thing the whole time.
In Topanga, nobody even raised an eyebrow.
And that was like how I could get my edit sorted and like do the closest thing to focus. I mean, before that, I would use classical music because it has a similar type of sort of like effect on your brain, supposedly. And that was like that was a very specific conditional thing. That was the closest I've ever got into my life to like the responsible 9 to 5 consistency.
Interesting. So do you find like not having to think about lenses, cameras, actors' parents, stuff like that, and you can just sort of kind of dial in on the story?
Yeah.
And you did that for 4 to 6 months. What was going on in the rest of your life while you were doing that? Was this one thing that you did amongst a lot of other things, or was this did you clear the table for that 4 to 6 months?
We were at this weird position with Monster that we were sort of like in a holding pattern. We had like a rough cut. We were like figuring out what to do next. And we had editors that I was able to sort of like give notes to for like 2 or 3 months, and they would execute and they would come back with cuts. So it just strangely found its way in this accidental sort of like opportunity. And within those, there were still times when I was like getting 3 hours of sleep because I had a double dip and stuff like that. But like, you know the deal, dude. Like, I've seen you work. Like when you're in it, like you just want to get back to it. So it was never like an issue of like stepping away at that time. It was an issue of like, okay, well, let's wrap this up quickly so I can get back to the writing and like put that brain back to where I was happiest at the time, which was just like working in that land.
Well, it's been a long time since the two of you have collaborated on something. And I'm wondering, what's it going to take to get you guys to work together again? I mean, I know that you read each other's drafts, listen to each other's demos. But Kevin, now that you have really dedicated yourself in the last few years to the study of guitar, and John, I don't know if you know this guy is with the amps and the pickups. He is
I
a
call him all the
gearhead.
time. He always thinks so. He's like, what are you talking about? He's like, just get the fucking digital thing. He's like, why are you fucking
Get
around
the
with
Line 6 Helix.
He's like, why are you fucking
get
around
Nick
with like
to dial it in.
69 Fender Twins? He's like, come on, dude.
He's after some stuff that was discontinued in 71, and you got to find an old guy in the San Fernando Valley who smokes cigarettes indoors still to work on it. But I feel like Bassist for a Day is the product of Kevin, you not being a musician and collaborating with John. Now that you are a musician,
I mean, let's not get carried away. I'm somebody who enjoys learning how to play new songs and get a little bit into the theory. Personally, I would love to actually have Barber score the next movie, not to put pressure on him, because I love when he has the freedom to sort of like compose. And to me, that's like a side of his creativity that I've always really, really wanted to find a way to collaborate again with him on. So the answer
I can get
is
better
like,
at that. I think. I mean, that's something that I always want to do. Yeah,
dude, you've become a complete ninja in the fucking studio now. Like,
yeah, I just bought some new stuff too. I have some old gear that was built by a guy who smokes in his house, and I have a few units here for that old smoky house vibe for the new album. So I'm going in the direction of your guitar playing. I'm doing in the studio. I just, for stage, I gotta be a transformer. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So like part of me, like I remember like when Barber wrote that waltz movement in one of your earlier songs. I forgot what song it is. Which one that has like
Devil's
the waltz in it?
Devil's Waltz.
Devil's Waltz. And like, that was like incredibly cool to like watch you compose and like tap that side of your brain. And one of the things that I always like about working with you is that you see things that like nobody else is seeing. Like even when we did Lettish years ago, like you were tuning into unique things and like seeing things conceptually on a level that like, other people weren't reading. And like, to me, that's what great scoring does. Like when I think about the great scores in movies, it's always this contrast of like conveying what's happening on screen, subverting what's happening on screen, creating an emotional atmospheric thing that allows you to get transported, and you do all that shit. So I think it'd be fun I just got to find enough money that I can borrow your time for the 3 to 4 months that it'll take for you to, smoke cigarettes in the basement or whatever.
I mean,
Max
dude,
framed it.
if you got to work on your book for 4 months straight without having to go on a tour and do other stuff, I'm jealous. That is, I would like at some point in my career to have like a 4 to 6 month block where the mortgage is paid and I can and my job is to go in the studio, produce stuff every day for that 4 to 6 month period. I mean, we do 4-day blocks of it now all the time, but on day 5, we're like, oh shit, I gotta go to the airport tomorrow. I gotta fly to High Sierra Music Festival, which is good. The band's in demand. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that 4 months to write a book sounds amazing. I know that like bands used to make albums, Dark Side of the Moon, for instance, in like 4 to 6 month chunks. It's really good art. It's great artistically. Like you can tell when you read the book that it's not like you're like living with each character. Each character has these details that stay consistent and are the character throughout the whole entire book. And I think that those are the kind of benefits from living the art for months and months and months. Like the Hot Air Balloon has that a little bit. And I was in the Hot Air Balloon for 3 months straight we were playing Biscuit shows on the weekends, but it was just like 2 shows. It wasn't full tour. So it was just like, it was similar vibe.
Yeah. It's huge.
It's a good way to make art.
It's the ultimate. Was a rare treat, which is like, I'm sort of excited about, if it resonates with people, because like that is a fucking gift to be able to have that chunk of time to commit to something creatively.
Yeah, I mean, I think Biscuit fans will enjoy reading this book. We meet them all in our VIPs and on tour, and I can just picture a bunch of them that I think are going to read this book and be like, that was really fun. It's just, that's going to be the case. And then hopefully you can find another chunk and make the sequel, and keep going in this category. I mean, there's no reason why. I mean, you're an artistic guy. There's no reason you could go from music writer with Bassist for a Day to filmmaker to author. I mean, to me, that's just taking the art of telling a story and making it simpler and simpler and simpler as you get older.
I mean, that's a good way of looking at it. I got to be honest with you. I was thinking about showing up. I have a shoot next week and we have an early call time on Monday. And I was like, that doesn't sound fun. I got to shower, get in the car, drive someplace, have breakfast. It was like, that sounds like a lot of work where I can just go to my living room.
Well, as the Disco Biscuits roll into their 30th anniversary celebration, it's a lot of fun to look back and not only talk about the music and the shows, but also about the relationships and the friendships and the collaborations that stretch back decades. And really, I can't think of one that goes back further than the one that we've been talking about today between Kevin Abrams and BARBER. And so it's been great, Kevin, having you on and not only hearing about your history with John, but also about your own long history of being a creative who works across pretty much any storytelling medium, visual or written. And Kevin, anything that you have in the works apart from the novel that you would like the Touchdowns All Day audience to keep an eye out for?
We're wrapping a doc right now on the history of Las Vegas music, sort of like a 23 from Stardom meets the Wrecking Crew. Sort of travels with all the players I played with, from Sinatra to Gaga. And I'm going to work on finishing this script so that BARBER and I can collaborate again. And we got to find a way to, sorry, rest of the band. We just want to borrow them for 3 months. You have 12 to 18 months to figure it out. And then you're also all welcome to join as well, John. If you need some support, you can bring in the other guys too, but it'd be awesome to fucking
I would
watch
probably bring
Barber
some people
compose.
with me. Yeah, I would bring some
Yeah.
people with me. Why not? I mean, you gotta have bridge machine with you. You know what I mean?
Dude.
You don't want to get stuck with no bridge machine and no bridge. That would be bad.
What did I hear at the last episode? You guys were talking about like electric orchestra or
The techno orchestra.
techno. What is the techno orchestra?
The techno orchestra is when I pull up these pre-made, these like British guys make like these pre-made templates for techno songs. And they have MIDI notes for a techno song in it. And if you select those MIDI notes and press delete, you're just left with the techno orchestra. And then you put your own notes in there. And sometimes, I usually go to a different key than they're in because I'm usually going to whatever key we're trying to write in at the time. Because generally we know what the song is going to sound like because we're not starting scratch with the techno orchestra. We'll start with like a loop of the Disco Biscuits playing live that we really like. And then I'll take that loop and I'll put it in the same file as the techno orchestra. I'll delete whatever the techno orchestra was playing. And then I'll tune it to the new key because they have samples in there and stuff. And then I'll remake the Disco Biscuit loop using the techno orchestra. And it's a good way to do it because Alan and Mark are on something that's usually very unique compared to what a techno guy would write, because they're actually playing it and feeling it and in a moment of jam where they're so into it that we think, oh, let's loop that. You know what I mean? So I don't think you can like sit down with your laptop on an airplane, if you're like a producer and like come up with that. I don't think you can do that, right? And so, but when we put it into those instruments, it sounds like somebody really made some crazy techno that day. And then I'll take the guitar lines and I'll put them on different synths, and I'll take the keyboard lines and I'll put them on different synths. So everything's a synthesizer or a drum machine. And that's what the techno orchestra is. It's when I make a loop and it's using synths, drum machines, and no like real instruments. And then we'll write over that. And we'll use that. Magner will come in, bring a synth, and he'll cut keyboards over that. Mark will come in and play some of his bass or something, and we'll change the bass lines. And then I'll just use that all as like ingredients, and I'll cook it into something that I think has some movement. Joey be writing lyrics the whole time, and I'm talking to him about his lyrics and keep that line, change that line, stuff like that. And then eventually we'll have the loop, a techno orchestra loop, and then I'll just take my phone out and go to voice memo and press record, and then we'll just sing the different lyrics over the music. Like me and Joey would just sit next to each other and just like we'll just sing. We'll try and sing something good, but it doesn't matter. And then you'll do that for like 15 minutes until you sing a couple things that you'll be like, oh, I like that. You go back, you listen to it, you kind of get how it goes, and then I'll cut it on the big mic for real. And then it's like, oh, instant demo. Suddenly the demo just magically appears. That's like kind of what the techno orchestra is. It gives you like a techno song.
How long does that like process? Can you do that in a day, or is that like multiple days?
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah, so
That's fucking crazy.
Yeah, I mean,
I'll go to bed sometimes. I'll go to bed sometimes. They'll have sent me 2 demos, and then when I wake up the next morning, there's another demo.
Wow.
Another spin, I think, was in that category. It was like, we're done. Let's just bang one more out.
And do you use any of those tracks live, or do you recreate them with the instruments? Like, do you ever use it? Like, say, like this is a sample I'm going to fly in as like a back atmospheric or something, and then play on top of it.
I mean, Scars of the Brave, I was looking for a snare sound because I'm like crazy about the snares. Every song has to have its own unique, different snare. And I go deep on the snares for no reason. It just gives me something to do, I guess. And while I'm looking for snares, I don't like the other people in the room to get bored. So I was in this folder that had that like vocal sound in it. And I just threw it into the project because we had that keyboard riff and some hi-hats, and I'm looking for snares, and I just threw that sample into the file because they were like working on like some of Joey's lyrics and how to sing them. Magner and Joey were working on it. and I was picking snares. And so to not bore them, I just threw that vocal in there. And they were like, this is the greatest thing ever. So I was just so, you have to leave room for that serendipity to happen. And then, of course, that sample goes to stage. Yeah. But if I compose a specific line, like in the keyboards or something in the techno orchestra, and nobody on stage plays it, I don't take it personally. It happens all the fucking time. Like the Freeze demo is totally different from what the band does. Why We Dance is kind of different. Like some things just the band.
Do you bring that into like the studio when you're doing like a proper song recording? Like, is that like a reference track or something you bring in, or do
I
you
have done that. Yeah. For Firewall Exchange, I played Magner's keyboard line, which he played live, which I cut out of his live performance and put it into the song because I loved it so much. It's so weird and awesome and vibey. And he doesn't like it at all. So I mean, he just doesn't give a shit. Like Magner, like he has so many ideas. Like he doesn't really stick on an idea because he's got another one.
Like, ideas,
he's got so many ideas. It's intense. So like you have to like kind of stamp his ideas for him and hold to them for him. So he does, because he's already moved on, Yeah. And so like one of my jobs with him is to make sure that I'm like archiving his great moments, And so that line of Firewall Exchange is like, I love that keyboard line. And so I'll put that when we were cutting it in the studio, it'll just show up. And I don't know if it'll make the final. Like, I don't really fall in love with lines like that, but I do. Certain things are really, really cool, and it's hard to say goodbye to them, Somebody gets demo love, it's me, but like the Firewall Exchange demo, I think is just unbelievable on every level. I can't even... I'm having trouble replacing that one. Like the other demos were good, but that one is just like incredible.
And that's your demo, dude. That's your song.
It might be. We'll see. We cut it in the studio. We also did a new version of it in Sayreville. So, yeah, Mark did some different things on bass. He did more of like a doorbell type of bass line, which was like something we talked about experimenting with. And he just did the experiment live. Like nobody knew he was going to do it. And so I was looking at him like, okay, let's try that. Cool. Yeah. So I got to listen to that a couple more times. I heard it once and it was really good. So I don't know which... The studio version of Firewall Exchange, which to me is very important. Like, that's a really important song to get right. So the question is, there's a lot of different directions.
Do you have an ETA for the like? When's the album coming out?
I mean, we listened to it, the whole album, a couple days ago. I have vocals to do on a couple of songs, but most of them are done. I have guitar solos. Magner's got a couple extra keyboards. It's pretty much done. Like the bitch is almost in the can. I'll probably have somebody who mix it who's not me, because I don't know. I just don't. I don't do that job professionally, and so we'll figure that out. So I don't know. I would like to put out a song a month for the next year. I mean, hopefully I can get one out quick. It's good. It's a good album. I'm really psyched about it,
dude. With that, like, process, that is such a fucking cool process.
Yeah, it's like, wild, but it's really the process, like the question is, how do you get to that first initial seed of an idea? And like, I have a bunch of different ways for that, and unfortunately I don't get to do all of them as much as I was hoping to, because the Biscuits, there's always 4 more amazing jam spots from the last month of shows that you can make bangers out of. There's always 4 great moments of pure improv that the band got into, because it's just what we do. So it's hard to do the like, I used to walk around the park with like a voice recorder and just go blah, 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 blah. And like, I kind of miss doing that.
Yeah, but being able to deconstruct your explorations and like use that for like future seedlings, I don't know how to even express it, is like fucking amazing.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
It's like you don't have the voice recorder anymore. You have 30 seconds and you're like, this is a melody. Let me see what I can do with this.
Yeah, it's really fun. Like it takes all the, Peter Thiel has that book. It's called like 0 to 1 or something. And it's like how to be a tech bro. And it's whatever it is. But I always thought the title was weird because for artists, 0 to 1 is its own thing. It's like, how do you go from this doesn't exist to, oh, I got something worth working on here. And the nice thing about the systems we have now is you can get to a demo that you want to email Max in 3 or 4 hours. And that demo itself could, be, it stands on its own. Like I'm trying to release, my goal is at the end of each session to record a demo that if I played it for somebody, they'd be like, oh, this is an actual song. And that was a rule I taught myself after years of like having things on my hard drive and then having the computer systems change and not being able to get those songs back.
Yeah.
The software doesn't work anymore, the computer doesn't work, or it lost the files, and now I can't hear that song ever again. So now I like always make a 2-track as if that's the final recording. And those 2 tracks are fire, dude. And then when the band learns to play them, the Disco Biscuits, we aren't like, let's play this exactly like the record band, like Sonic Youth or Rush or,
do you guys use charts? I mean, do you have a version of like being like, okay, this is the melody line, play this, here's the bass line? Or is it more like, here are the chords, roughly what we're trying to do melodically, like stay on that?
Yeah, if I give people lines, takes away their own ability to make the song theirs, and I don't really want to do that. Like I don't have an interest in giving people. I want people to put their own creative energy into the song over and over and over again. So you can't tell them stop on the first try. You have to give them like that carte blanche right off the bat, so they never feel bad about having carte blanche on the song. And so I never ever tell somebody play this line or play that line. I'll say from time to time, like, that line you played at blah 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 is really cool, but like that's about as far as I'll go, because I do understand that these songs, they live and they breathe and they change. And that's kind of what people like about the Biscuits. And so, it's kind of what's interesting about the Biscuits too. Like, if I had washboard abs, I'd be like, here's your fucking line, point the camera at these. You know what I mean? But
you guys are doing push-ups every 60 minutes. You may have to washboard abs before you know it, dude.
That's the goal.
We didn't quite get there. You know what I mean?
Max has washboard abs. You can have him demand on your behalf.
Max might become the lead singer of the Biscuits with the new slate of songs they're putting out.
Yeah. You definitely do not want that. But I can't help but bring it back to what Kevin said earlier about the maxim of write drunk, edit sober. The spontaneity of just getting it out on the page, getting it out into the room is sort of what's happening with the Jamception model. You play it, you're not in the moment thinking, oh, I have to write a song now. You're playing a Disco Biscuits show. You're putting it all out there in a very flow state kind of way. Then you and Joey get into the studio. You isolate a few bars. You pull the multi-tracks apart. You bring in the techno orchestra. That's when the real work begins. But getting from 0 to 1 is that critical step that could completely sidetrack or destroy creativity, that paralysis of sitting down in front of a blank page or sitting down with your instrument and the recorder and saying like, oh God, I've got to write a song now. You've taken that part out of the equation by giving yourself that kernel of free, unadulterated creativity that came on stage. Then you go through the process. And at that phase, it's fun because you're working with materials.
And you're giving everything value. Like it's not just a disposable moment at a show in like Worcester, Mass. It's like possibly something that could be your next song. Like I think about like if David Bowie or Brian Eno or like somebody like that who really played with the form of songwriting and like generating music, like what a cool thing that they would be able to like, what a great fucking way to create. Like you're giving yourself like endless opportunities.
Well, like when
Like,
Jay-Z
that's-
goes to Timberland's studio, Timberland plays him 10 beats, and one of them is and he's like, I can work with that. And so he's like picking a song that's already a hit and then putting his vocals on top of it. And that's that game. That's how that game is played. I was a guitar player in those studios watching that game get made. And so I think I learned that from those guys. And then when we figured out that we had our own little hip hop beat making studio for us, which used to be me, like when I was living in Woodland Hills, I was in that little back studio and I would make a different beat every single day. One of those beats turned into Freeze. One of those beats turned into Twisted in the Road. Like those were that, and that was like out of 20 beats, I got 2 or 3 good songs out of that. That's a method, you make a beat every morning and then you start your day after that. It's like the Stephen King method or something. But when we realized that the Biscuits themselves are a techno loop studio producing creative moment, it gave me the ability as the music producer to stay ahead of the other guys. So Aaron could be cooking up. I'd be like, Aaron, these chords suck. Figure it out. Joey, we need some words. Figure it out. Mark, why is this bass line cluttering this stuff up? Like, we need some drum samples. And I can kind of delineate these concepts, and I could stay ahead of them because it only takes so long to play the chords or to write some lyrics and stuff like that. And by the time they come back to me, I don't need to sit. I already have something for Joey to sing over. I already have something for Aaron to play over. So it allows me to stay ahead of those guys. And so they can just run as fast as they can go. And then suddenly, boom, 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 boom. Aaron gets hot for a second. Joey gets hot while Aaron's getting hot because he sees Aaron go. And then next thing you know, he's rapping something. And then I go take over and we cut some lyrics here, add some lyrics there. Suddenly it's a hook. Next thing you know, it's Firewall Exchange. Yes, the Firewall Exchange demo versus the version we debuted, we worked those lyrics over every single day for the next 2 weeks. But it was there on day one. The song was there on day one. And that's...
Yeah, and then you got to process the next phase is how does Barber now and the rest of the band perform it? Can these lyrics feel good for me to sing it?
Yeah.
On day 5 of a tour? Am I psyched with what I'm saying?
Well, what's interesting about that demo is it really comes out of the fact that the effect, I took Alan's drums from his live performance, and it sounds like he's playing rain and gunshots at the same time. This is what it sounds like. And so he doesn't even know how to do that live. He's like, I don't know what that is. And I'm like, but that's what it is, dude. And he's like, I don't know. So I don't know. It's interesting how that moment where Alan was deep into experimentation for that song is kind of what the vibe of the song comes from, and then the lyrics come from the vibe, which is the right way to do it, I think.
That's cool.
No, I don't know if it's the right way to do it, but it's a way that works.
Bob Dylan may say differently, but hey, it works for the Biscuits.
I mean, I don't know if Bob was if it was Bob, obviously he was lyrics first most of the time, but was he? I don't even know. I got to find out.
I don't know. The great argument I've been making lately with people is pay attention to his melodies. His melodies are gorgeous.
Yeah, they're nice. And I don't know. Yeah, how
simple and not super complicated, but just beautiful little progressions.
Yeah, cool chord progressions, cool walking stuff, a lot of great rhyme schemes. Who knows? There's the whole fog of war thing. You can look back at history and you can see the events and you can see the results, but you can't see the fog that made it all happen. And with Bob Dylan, it's very similar. You can look back and you can see the artistry, but you can't see what was going on in the music world when he came up with all that stuff. What was on the radio? Was it Fabian? Was it Donovan? Was it, Joni Mitchell? What was on the radio? What was in it was looping around everybody's heads when he came up with, a simple twist of fate. It's hard to hear the vanguard of music in somebody's song, but I feel like it's important. I feel like it affects what you write, the Stephen King method, like wake up every morning, write for 3 hours, and then take a break, eat a sandwich, and then read is what the other side of it was. He used to read other people's stuff. So I did that for a while, which was get up every morning, make some music, have a sandwich, and then listen to, like, just force myself to listen to, you know, Spotify hot daily stuff, old jazz, just like whatever. And I thought it was really interesting how much new music I was taking in because I was forcing myself to listen to other people's music for an hour or two every day.
Yeah, no, I mean, influences. Every night I watch a new movie just to get that reminder of, like, somebody's playing with this medium. It's like, what are they doing? How are they editing? Like, what's the vibe? Like, what are they pushing forward? Oh, I would never do it that way. That's an option. Like, you got to. Like, you have to.
That's an option. You know, an interesting fun fact about Kevin, Max?
What's that?
He won't watch Survivor because he can't watch any forms of reality TV because all he sees is the donut table.
As somebody who has a lot of reality television credits, I have definitely watched my share of it. I haven't watched it only because it feels very daunting to go back now and watch 27 seasons of a show.
27?
Is it 20?
48.
Okay, so even more so.
Yes. Yeah.
I know you and Lisa went on a tear, dude.
Yeah.
You've seen more of them than I have at this point, so.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
We've got some Thai takeout from the spot up in Winnetka that's waiting for us. So we're gonna, we'll be enjoying it in your honor, John. We miss you. We wish you were out here. You can join us, but you're doing more important work. You are being a dad, Stevie Lynn,
something Josephine.
Apparently, I have to craft. Hello World social media post of.
You gotta get the PR team on that.
Apparently, Billy Strings did it, so I have to do it.
Oh, yes.
I'm kidding. He did do it.
You should have Billy Strings announce your daughter.
I should. I'll ask him. See if he's
got like Billy, dude. You want to do me a solid?
Can you write me a bluegrass song for my daughter
in honor of Stevie Lynn?
Yeah.
Well, John, we're going to wrap things up. Kevin, thank you for joining us. Kevin, where can people find you on the internet if they want to learn more about the book, the movies, the docs, everything you got going on?
I am a very sloppy interneter, but I am in the process of building my webpage. So hopefully that'll be up in the next week. So the quick answer, it's on Amazon right now, Barnes & Nobles. There's all sorts of stuff on my Instagram, L_Kman, with teasers and links to where you can purchase it. And it'd be amazing if you guys took the time.
John and I will definitely post about Mount Forgotten, where you could find it. Like John said, I think that the Biscuits fan base is going to enjoy this. All the ski bums in the Biscuits world. I think this book will resonate with you very deeply. And even if you're not a skier, not a Biscuits fan, this is a legitimately powerful book that I really think everyone is going to enjoy. And so, Kevin,
thank you, bud.
Thank you very much for coming on the show. John, thanks for taking time out of all of your dad duties.
I know, bud. Double dipping now.
I get hit in the face with a stick today. I did my job already.
Yes. Well, on behalf of John Barber, Max Dawson saying, see you next time, guys.
Disco Biscuits forever.
See you guys.
We're mass communicating. Mass communicating. Mass communicating.
Touchdowns All Day is an Osiris Media production. Check us out on the web at www.touchdownsallday.com. This episode was written, produced, and edited by me, Max Dawson, and was mixed and mastered by Matt Dwyer. John and I would love to hear from you. 424-666-SIYD. That's the Touchdowns All Day hotline. Leave us a message with your questions or feedback. John's at Barber Shreds. I'm at FY Maxwell on all the socials. And you could also get us at TDADBaby on X. and at Touchdowns All Day on Instagram. Make sure you're subscribed to Touchdowns All Day on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're feeling so inclined, leave us a review. Helps other people discover the show. Even better yet, share an episode with a friend. This and every episode of Touchdowns All Day would not be possible without the contributions of many, including the Disco Biscuits road crew. That's Ben, Pat, Nick, Brian, Rich, Dane, Amin, Herm, and Tar Gracer. The band itself, Mark, Aaron, John, and Alan. The management, Ben Baruch and Andrew Kaplan at 1111. The Touchdowns All Day Advisory Committee, that's Andy Bazzani, Mike Walsh, Dave Cook, Mr. Think Tank Dubs himself, Scott McClintock, John Goldberg, John Politis, Colleen Stern, and Ryan Ryonics. Thanks to our coaches, Joey Friedman and Steve Martocci. And of course, an extra special thanks to my partner, Avery McMahon. Love you, babe.
Osiris.